Greetings, everyone. I want to welcome everybody this evening to a very special program that I think you will enjoy and will get a lot of information from. My name is Brad McElwain. I am part of the Office of Family Engagement here at Wake Forest. Many of you may have joined us last year in a similar program that we did that we wanted to bring to the families of different classes some insight and information that might be customized a little bit to your student's class age or year as to what to expect in the process. I think most of you, if you were here for Family Weekend or if you've been in touch, obviously, with your children, know this is a completely different year. The energy level on campus is off the roof. Everybody is having just a great time. I'm not sure if that's translating into all the students being on top of everything they need to be doing, or if they're having so much fun that they're working toward it. But I think this information tonight should be very informative on your end to be able to help you to be able to know what's going on in some of the market trends and some of the things happening. It might be specific to the senior class. But I want to introduce you to start off, and I did this last year, Andy Chan, who came to Wake Forest about 12 years ago. Andy came from Stanford and kind of came with a vision to be able to create a whole new program here at Wake Forest, and the Office of Personal Career Development is an example of that. And I think tonight you'll see again a very personal, insightful way to be able to help your students move forward. So Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brad. And it's great to see everyone who's joining us this evening. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn a bit about what's happening in the job market, learn what college senior students should be thinking about and doing to try to be on the right track, whether they're thinking about graduate school or a job or anything else, and how we can help them. I've got 3 people on my team, senior leaders who are being represented. Heidi Robinson, who is our Assistant Vice President for Career Education and Training. And she also teaches our college to career courses and manages all of the coaches who work with all of the students in the college. We have Mike Crespi, who is one of our senior leaders in the School of Business, working with all the undergraduate students in the School of Business, and can really speak to what is happening over actually on the business school side. And then Stuart Meese, who's head of employer relations and works with all of the employers. His team, about 10 people, work with all the employers to connecting with our students, both in person as well as virtually, which is a new added dimension of the complexities of recruiting during this time. So we look forward to sharing all of what we know and ways that you as a parent can be helpful to your student. So why don't I ask Stuart first to join me, and we're going to talk a bit about the market, since Stuart actually does quite a few things in terms of speaking to employers, doing all the research. He can share it in a little bit. He has a whole video he gives about the state of the market, and a lot of newsletters that we send to employers to help them be better recruiters at Wake Forest. But we'll get into that in a second. Why don't we first talk about just, Stuart, tell us a little bit about just the state of the current job market, and how you sort of would compare what's happening now compared to past years.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Andy, and thanks to all of you for joining and spending your time with us. I would say if I had a bumper sticker, it's as good as it's ever been. That would be probably how I would set it up. I mean, it's very well documented what's happening with the labor market right now, and that's trickling down to college students. We're having, record numbers of opportunities that are available on our Handshake platform, and there's plenty of opportunities to go around. That may not be the exact thing people want, but there's plenty of opportunities that are going around. And these opportunities come from our established relationships and our Wake employer network of companies. This also is supplemented by our sourcing for particular positions that we know Wake students are interested in. And then just being a member of the Handshake network, you're going to reap some benefits there as well. But there are plenty of opportunities out there right now.
Yeah, I find that, in my 20 years of having been in this business, where we had the dot-com boom and bust, and then we had the pre-recession boom and then bust, and then now, I guess leading into COVID, I thought we were going to have this major bust where there were going to be no jobs. That's the way I think I felt last, March of 2020. but it's actually totally exploded. Like we're seeing more jobs than we've ever seen, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's about 22,000 opportunities that are active on our network right now. I think it's about 14,000 full-time, 1,000 internships, which is normally the case. There's always going to be more full-time than internship opportunities, which is good for this audience of seniors. And pretty much most every category of group is looking. I mean, obviously, some are always going to be higher than others. Recruiters are high now because everyone's looking for folks. You got a lot of salespeople, those that require billable skill sets like accounting, IT, engineering, STEM. That's always healthcare. That's always going to be high as well. But there are plenty of opportunities to go around.
And even if you were looking for opportunities in some of those areas you just described, it seems like employers are a lot more open to hiring people from different backgrounds. Like you don't necessarily have to have studied it. You might be able to either through your internships or through doing some kind of certificate. Like you can actually supplement your resume in such a way that, we talk about at Wake Forest is that you're not married to your major. So you could be an English major that actually gets some certificate skills through LinkedIn Learning and do some things with your clubs and then be able to get an analytics job if you wanted to. Like, are you finding that employers are actually, it sounds like they're all competing against each other. They're definitely more open to hiring people from different backgrounds, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case, and our data would support that. We've looked at first destination outcomes for the last couple of years, and we're able to break it down now in a system called Power BI. And you would be surprised. I'd be glad to communicate with anybody if you email me of a particular major. But I think there was a question about comm majors, for instance. What are the top places that they're going in and so forth. And it's pretty surprising. You would not think a comm student would be going into, say, consulting, or a political science student going to consulting. Well, that's actually where they've landed. If you're looking at historical data, and we have all of that information. We can tell you the top employers, the median starting salaries, what job function they went into by major. Our capabilities are pretty good. And then when you look at external data, using sites such as Burning Glass or Jobs EQ, where it's looking at what the demand is by looking at a lot of job postings, kind of the four that kind of come to the top are sales, because people need to generate revenue, and most any major can do that. Project management is key right now, especially if you can work toward a CAPM or PMP certification. Excel skills, very important. Working with those pivot tables, very, very important right now with a lot of data analytics skills. And then if you have any lick sense, you would want to get into computer science because that's really where the action is, and we'll continue with cyber and other data analytics and fields of that sort. So those are some of the typical things that regardless of major students can do. And if you can master that by complementing or supplementing with a certification or LinkedIn Learning class, it would go a long ways.
Great. So another thing, Stuart, is that, there is this belief sometimes that all the companies who are recruiting come during the fall and there's like nothing in the spring. So if you don't get something in the fall, that you're really stuck. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between the types of companies that really recruit in the fall and the industry and types of jobs versus those that are recruiting during the rest of the year, and the difference between like traditional recruiting and then just-in-time recruiting?
Yeah, so having been a recruiter in the past, and if I had a quota that I had to meet, I want to get the best candidate I could possible. And I was in IT recruiting. So I knew that there weren't a lot to go around. I knew I had to get them as quickly as possible. And I didn't really care which school they came from, as long as the hiring manager was satisfied with it. And so it's this notion of early bird gets the worm. It's a sense from a recruiter that the best are out there sooner. They're going to be off the market if I wait into the spring. So there's certain industries where people are going to come and do most of the recruiting in the fall. certainly, the banks and the accounting firms and engineering firms and things of that nature, those that are really in high demand. But then there's other fields that are more just in time. They may not know exactly what their staffing needs are going to be, or they may be heavily influenced by the economy, say hospitality and tourism, or some type of advertising or PR type of organization. And so there certainly are, more opportunities in the fall than I think there would be in the spring. But the thing that COVID has done is it's changed everything significantly. People can't forecast the same as they were really able to do more. And because certain companies aren't getting the talent they need, we believe that it's going to be spread out a little bit more into the spring this year than maybe what it's been in previous years. So I don't want you to go back and say, don't do anything, Sally or Bob, your kid. No, they need to be taking full advantage here in this fall semester. But know that if they don't get anything in the fall, it's not the end of the world. I think probably the best thing that students can do is to apply. We have about a significant number of jobs that have 0 applications from top tier employers. And we don't have a very big mass of students that are graduating here. If you take out those who are going to grad school, it's even less. So the big thing to do is to apply early and apply often before they get taken off the board. And again, if you know that the employer is looking to fill those spots as soon as possible, if your student can set up a search agent on Handshake, have those jobs sent to you, then you can respond to it, apply. You would check that off your list of things to do in your senior year, and you can really enjoy and have a fun time, especially when we win the ACC championship in football.
I like that positive thinking. So a couple more quick questions before I move on to a couple of our other team members. So this year we've experienced a lot of virtual recruiting, virtual like projections for even going into your job or internship. What's that been like? And, is it a big difference, virtual versus being in person, and how do you feel like students are adjusting to that?
Yeah, it is a lot of difference because, Wake Top 25 school, a lot of these companies come and kind of court our students a bit as being a target school. Now, not as many are coming for a variety of reasons. One, COVID related or budget related, but now they know through virtual recruiting, especially if they have a brand name, they don't need to come. It's a lot more efficient with that. So it sounds great for them, but it requires our students, I think, to do a little bit more, which is managing their Handshake profiles and getting involved in some of these virtual sessions that these employers were doing specifically for Wake Forest students. Now they're doing it for all the schools. So I think what's happened is that let's say a student from a lesser academic institution, which may not have had the opportunity before because the company was going to a smaller group of schools. Now they have an open opportunity to really get some of these opportunities. So I think the students still need to compete. They still need to apply and participate in some of these virtual events. And it has been kind of weird because, some people have things in person, some people have it only virtually. What does that look like? And we try to communicate the best that we can in our weekly pathways about these changes and through the market updates and others. But it's just a 180 in terms of what's happening with college recruiting, like it's been with a lot of other industries, supply chain, healthcare, you name it. So that's what we're seeing at this time, Andy.
Yeah, that's great. I have the feeling, there are definitely some students who are finding it really convenient to do it virtual, being able to schedule it and make appointments and do that. So that's been good. I think if the student's proactive, they're definitely getting a lot of activity for sure. One of the things that you and I talk about is thinking about applying for jobs like a funnel where it's, think about applying to 50 jobs so you can get to, I think we said maybe 10 interviews and all the way down to maybe 2 offers or something like that. And I know students sometimes think 50 sounds like a lot, but with the online tool like Handshake or LinkedIn, it's not that hard to apply to a job online. So I think it's allowing students to have a wide enough net and letting themselves have a lot of chances to have a lot of conversations than feeling like they're being too picky. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that that's kind of a key thing is that people are looking for that dream job. And I don't see it happen a lot right out of college. And I think a lot of times, all job seekers, not just students, they discard opportunities way too early in the process. And if you just give it a chance, give it a little time, you don't know what a company out there may be, whether it's a small startup in some, more smaller city, or it's a large company that you've heard of in the financial district in New York City. You got to diversify in terms of how you're applying to that, and you want to get as many of them out as you can. It's kind of like college admissions. If you just apply into 2 schools and you don't get in those 2, you're in trouble.
Right.
And not saying you want to apply to 100 schools, but certainly more than 2,
Right.
and kind of look at the risk reward off of that.
That's right. Well, that's great. Well, through our conversation, Patrick has been putting a lot of links to many of the pages that we talked about to find out, given what you majored in, where could you go? Where do our students go? The fact that, for the past decade or so, 96% of our students end up in jobs or graduate school within 6 months of graduation. And even last year in the middle of COVID, 2020, that class was 94.5. And so I know a lot of people worry about like how my students get a job, but at Wake Forest, students, I think they all come around and they get the work done when they need to. We like to have them do it sooner. And that's a role parents can play to help remind them to get the process started sooner. But if for some reason they had to finish school and had to start later, like things work out actually in that last 6-month period after graduation. And it can actually work out totally fine. There's still great opportunities at that point in time too. So
that's right. Just encourage them to apply. And if you have any questions, you can go in the Q&A and ask those questions now, or you can send me a private email. I'll put my email in there too.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to add a link to your employer relations page, in case anyone out there wants to hire a Wake Forest student for internship or job, but also they can get your newsletter about the state of the market that you put out every other week or so. That's probably another useful thing for many people who might be actually, working in companies or hiring people right now.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get back to you in a few minutes. Let's bring Mike out. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good, Andy. How are you? Thanks for having me. And thank you to all the parents that are on right now too.
Yeah, well, it's always fun to talk about what's happening in the business school. And you've worked with business school students for a while. And I was curious, like, as you experience the students and the employers, is it a lot different this year than it is than last year and the year before, or it feels sort of the same?
Well, there's actually 2 things. It feels a lot the same. We're busy. And the students are busy being recruited, interviewing, going through the process, resume reviews, and everything that goes along with it. And it's also very different. I look at it kind of what's made it different is the whole, as Stuart was talking about, the whole virtual aspect of it. But there's a virtual and there's an in-person aspect. So, trying to have students understand that both are good. They're not going to change. Virtual is here to stay. And embrace it. And I think that's one of the bigger challenges we have right now, because we're in person here and they want to be in person, and yet their recruiting is virtual and they're like, I'm done with that. I don't want to do that anymore. Well, learn how to do it really well, because that's what we do. That's business. And I think that from a networking, interviewing, and working perspective, it's something we're working with. And then the other thing that has really changed is there's a broader reach, in that, as Stuart was mentioning, there's lots of employers out there who are saying, hey, I can go to a lot of different places now. So I think one of the challenges that we're working on is how do we prepare the students in a way that embraces those challenges and then says, okay, now how can I differentiate myself? How do I connect with a larger network? So I think, being virtual, the broader reach, those are the 2 major differences. And I think both of them are here to stay.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it's a change, but I think our students are really showing that they're up for the challenge. I'm curious, actually, do you feel like networking, which you sort of mentioned networking, and we know how important it is, maybe you can speak to it briefly. What's networking been like during this time? Are alumni pretty open to being contacted? Are they tired of getting contacted too much? That kind of thing. What do you sense is happening? Is there any change in the networking sort of environment?
I would almost say they can't wait to talk to students. It's kind of like they can get away from their day-to-day Zoom meetings, or they can and it's like so encouraging for them. But what's really interesting about it is that was always mostly done virtually anyway. They use the phone. I mean, particularly in financial services, but anywhere else, you always had phone conversation. Sure, we had our on-campus events, but it was always a great to meet you. Here's my card. Let's set up a call. And so that part has continued, but I think the alumni are embracing it. They are excited about it. And I think the students are saying, hey, wait a minute, people are here to talk to me. They want to talk to me. And I think one of the things that becomes more important too is that, it helps align with what we're trying to teach, both in the college to career classes and as coaches, of engage, know your story, and be able to communicate it.
That's great. So another question that we get asked oftentimes is getting internships results in then a conversion to a full-time job. And it's actually less than what people think, because a lot of people make a really big deal out of it, thinking like, oh, if you don't get a really good internship at a really good company, you're not going to be able to get a good job your full-time. And this year in particular, because there's so many opportunities, as Stuart talked about, I don't think people have to be worried about it that much. Would you agree with that? Like, is anything different happening this year due to COVID or, the market?
I don't know that anything's different this year that's happening. The industry that seems to convert the most would be financial services, particularly in the investment banking space. That is how their strategy of recruiting. And some consulting, we're gathering numbers now, so we have a better idea of it. But the majority can use their internship experience as an experience to interview for other roles. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of right now is at-once needs. So when companies they're beginning to say, as Stuart was saying, there's lots of jobs out there. And I think it's going to continue, because in the marketing space, in the business development space, they're going to do it based on their need. Well, that's going to come. The boutique firms for finance and consulting, that's going to come. And they're going to come fast with short application windows. So it's kind of like it could be posted today and gone in 2 days, apply, and all of a sudden you're interviewing on Thursday. Then they call you back and say, you know what, we want to do a final round tomorrow. So yes, the internship conversion is still important in some spaces, but really what I'm seeing is the experience of being able to talk about it and being able to demonstrate that you contributed in a virtual, because many of them were virtual. And the ability that students had in providing value in a virtual space is really going to play well into their hiring opportunities.
Yeah, you brought up something there that I also like to sort of emphasize, is that oftentimes when students go through like interviewing with big consulting or big financial services company, they don't get a job, or they maybe get a job at a company that they aren't that excited about, and they're really disappointed. And what's interesting though is that all these more boutique type companies who come a little bit later, oftentimes the people who run those companies are people who are alumni from the big firms who are running a small firm. And when you go work at a smaller firm, you actually get more mentoring and more sort of experience with the work of the firm than you do at a big place. So to not discount that, I think a lot of times students think like life is over, I'm not going to get to work at the big firm. But in fact, they start to realize, wait, there's some really great people to work with at small firms too. And I think that's a good thing for people to keep in mind.
Oh, I agree with you. The other thing, you brought it up just now, is I think you get a wider breadth of experience, because they don't have the depth. So you could be doing this project, that project, this project. Now you're working shoulder to shoulder with the senior leaders who are not only just mentoring you, but now you're working on a key project for the company.
Yeah. Well, Mike, one last question for you. If you've been a parent of college students, college seniors, probably different levels of engagement in the process. any advice you'd give to parents about ways to help their child to get engaged if they're either struggling through it or haven't really gotten engaged? Is there anything that you might say that could be helpful?
Sure. And there's lots, but and they'll hear, make sure that the students are staying engaged with the office, make sure their stuff is current, that they have a multi-pronged approach to what they're doing. But I think most importantly is they need to sign up for the pathways. They need to be looking at those postings and the information, have them intend, but really as parents, have the students embrace the opportunity, embrace the virtual space, have them engage with their career coach, and utilize the resources available to them. And I think the other thing too is engage with personal networks, the home networks, their other students, but most of all, encourage them, embrace the change in both virtual and the shorter timelines.
That's great, Mike. Thank you for that. And we don't mind actually when students say, oh, the reason why I came is because I wanted to get my parent off my back and they keep bugging me to go. And we're like, whatever it takes. Well, we're glad you're here and we want to help you. And I always tell people, finding a job anytime, whether it's a hot market or not, is always hard. And it's emotionally difficult until you get that one yes that you're happy about. So you just have to continue to just find a way to stay positive. And so like being with a coach, having classmates that you're, maybe even doing it in a group process. Sometimes we'll take students through that kind of process. That too is also really helpful. So thanks, Mike. I'm going to bring you back in a few minutes. I'll go talk to Heidi now. Hi, Heidi. Great to see you.
Glad to be here.
Great. Well, Heidi, you work with a lot of students and a lot of students in the college. And oftentimes we hear from college students who feel a little bit like, oh, the opportunities are for the business students, or, they have more resources. And you and I know that that's not exactly the case. And I was wondering if you might be able to just share a little bit about all the things that we do provide to all the students in the college and ways they can be engaged to be on the path to be able to find something great, whether it be grad school or a full-time job.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Andy, about sometimes the perceptions that students have about what is here and what is not. I'm going to start there by just saying that sometimes when students feel stuck, what they start to do is to bring up reasons why they're not going to engage. And so I think as a parent, it's really important to know that when that comes up, if you hear that, it's not that you have to push back, but you might just encourage them to come and actually see what is here. We sometimes have students who are having that discussion that the students in the college aren't as resourced as students in the business school, and that is just not true. And that is because for our students in the college, they can be over here engaging with us on everything from the beginning portion of this process, understanding how to map their major and the skills and valuable experiences they've gotten from that, exploring different career paths, and then beginning to go ahead and develop all of their personal branding materials from their resumes, their Handshake profile, their LinkedIn profile, all the way through the search and the networking portion. So all of those things are open to our students in the college, including regular clinics that we do, both in resume and interviewing and in job search. And those things are really particular to our seniors and things that we want them to know and to be doing.
Yeah, one of the things that you and I talk about is oftentimes when we ask students, oh, how come you haven't come to see us? And they're like, well, I haven't figured out what I want to do. And maybe could you talk a little bit about why we love seeing those students and how we help them begin to figure out what they might want to do?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, sometimes students say, not only do I think that I have to know what I want to do, I think I have to have it all figured out, a plan from A to Z. And in fact, what we love to do is to talk to those students and say, well, you may not know exactly what you want, but we're pretty sure you know what you don't want to do. So let's go ahead and begin with some exploration. And in fact, that part is really exciting because what we get to see is we get to see students actually to see their energy ignite and their interests ignite, and then begin to connect them with people in our Wake Forest network who can actually unpack some of the opportunities that students just don't know about. And then we get to see that the momentum. All they need is just a little bit of excitement, momentum, and things really begin to unfold for them. And that's one of the things that everyone in our office, we wish for that. That's some of our favorite, those are some of our favorite places to work are on connecting student interest with opportunity.
That's great. We talk a little about some of the easy, I guess, first steps just to get started in the process. Can you describe, I think about handshake profile, resume, LinkedIn profile, like what are those simple things that a student might say, oh, or a parent could say to their student, oh, I heard these are good things to get started with. I'm sure over at the office, they have people to help you with it. Or you can make an appointment, or there's like a group session to help you with those things. Can you walk through this just so that if a parent were talking to their student, they might say, these things are, I hear they're important to get a job these days. If you don't have it, you might want to check it out.
Sure. And I would say there are four tools and one particular skill that I would want students to have. One, I want them to have that resume. I want it to be updated. Some of our seniors right now, they're trying to get through this first back on campus portion of their semester. But what I really also want them thinking about is I want them thinking about making sure that their resume, their LinkedIn profile, and especially their handshake profile are ready to go and up to speed. The other thing that I want students to be able to do is to understand the process of connecting with our alumni and developing their own professional network. I'm going to say, not every student thinks that they want to have these conversations with people that and this is what they say, they don't know. But there are no allies quite like other deacons who are out in the workplace. And so knowing how to reach out, how to conduct that conversation, that's one of the skills that I want them to have. And then I guess I would add, it's both a skill and a sort of a branding, if you will, but I want them to have a professional introduction. In other words, it's an answer to either tell me about yourself or what do you want to do when you graduate? And if our students can have those things, right? So they're professional branding tools, but then also those skills of the connecting with their, I would say, fans outside of Wake Forest and their other Wake Foresters who have gone before them, and then their professional introduction. That all of those things in some way help create this very confident student who's willing to pursue at a more engaged level.
Great.
And each one of those things, that's in our wheelhouse here. We want those students up here, but whether it's walk-in or whether it's an appointment.
Great. Well, as you were talking, Patrick has done a great job of putting a lot of links into the chat that if you are a parent out there, you just want to click on it, it'll open up a browser window to show all of the different types of things that Heidi was talking about. And also to many of you, you have questions about if my child is a blank major, what they can do. And if you go to the Explore Majors page, you can see the specific content we have there that helps students see all the different things they can do out of that major that Wake Forest students have done before. There's a huge Excel spreadsheet of all the kinds of places they've gone to work. So, but the reality is that every student has their own story. And by coming and talking to one of our coaches, they can help figure out, given what their interests are, what their values are, what they're excited about, we might be able to help them move into a direction that may be something that no other person in their major has ever done before, but they have a unique set of skills and stories and experiences that enable them to do it. So to not be thinking, just because I majored in this, I can get that, because it's a lot more personal than linear.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. And I would add that students often, they undervalue many of the skills, the transferable skills that they have received through their major. And so one of the things that I think is really important that we can walk through with them are all of the very, very much the embedded professional experiences that are a part of being a social major or a comm major. And so helping them understand that also adds to that confidence, but it also helps them realize how marketable they are and how many opportunities are available for them.
I have two quick questions, and then I'll pass it to you to talk to Maya. One question is specifically about engineering. So one of the things that warmed my heart this year is that this was the first year the engineering program had a set of graduates, and they actually went to review by the accreditation body for the engineering program. And we got a chance to present what we do with the engineering program and the outcomes for those students. And I thought maybe you could briefly just talk about the kind of support we give to that program mainly because it's new, but also we got a question from a parent wondering, what do we do? How does it work? And what are the prospects for engineering students?
Oh my goodness, I'm going to start at the end and work my way back. The prospects for the engineering students are robust. Those students have all sorts of opportunities, and we have seen our students land in everything from banking and consulting to engineering roles and in graduate school. So I would say they have had tremendous success in a host of different industries and job functions. The kinds of support that we have had and given to our engineering students has been really remarkable. And it has been because we knew that this was a new program for Wake Forest. We knew that they had a small cohort, and we wanted to make sure that we saw them through this whole process. One of the ways that we have done this is we have partnered alongside the engineering faculty. There is a cohort of faculty within their department that is embedding professional experiences within their coursework. So every one of our students, as soon as they're in that program, they begin having professional experiences that are part of their assignments. They have to go visit a coach. They have to build a resume. And then we have a dedicated coach who is in STEM. Brian Mendenhall is his name. And he has been involved with that engineering program since it began. And so he is in front of every one of those students from the time they enter the engineering program. They begin to develop a relationship with him. And at the same time, he's also empowering our engineering faculty. So we're working from both sides. There's also something called a STEM pathway newsletter, and every engineering student should be opening that newsletter. It has opportunities for both internships and for full-time jobs in it, as well as success stories of some of the other students who have just graduated or had internships. And then we feed all sorts of internships and job opportunities every single week to the faculty in the engineering department, and they share them with our students. So we'd want that student in here, but we would also want you as a parent to know that the engineering program has received a lot of support and will continue to. We're excited about the certification that's come through.
Heidi, thanks for that description. And it gives me the chills knowing that that's what you've been able to do, because that's sort of what we've always hoped for, is that the faculty would want to partner closely with us to help the students become career ready and employable. And they've done a really good job of that. And if your child, for any reason, isn't feeling engaged, talking to their own faculty and talking to Brian will definitely get them on the right path. And even though we're doing that with engineering, I also appreciate that you're developing the same kind of relationships with all of the faculty and all the different departments. So it's not only exclusive to engineering, but we're actually spreading it across the school. Let me go one last question, just about thinking about grad school and law school in particular. What's the kind of advice you give to students about going to law school? Is it something about it used to be you just go right away. Now, do you give that same advice, or do you give them some different advice for any particular reason?
Well, I want those students to think very carefully about making that decision to go right from undergraduates into law school. And a lot of that has to do with their level of experience regarding professional opportunities. There are students who think that they want to go directly into law school and may not know that there are other things that could be as satisfying for them. So one of the things that we've asked students to do is to hold lightly this idea that they want to go to law school, or with both hands, as far as I'm concerned, but at the same time to be pursuing other opportunities. They could be a better law school student if they have an idea about the kinds of professional opportunities that will intrigue them after they are finished with law school. And some students find that they go out into the world and they work, and though they initially thought that their graduate or professional school might have been something like law school, it may actually be an MBA. So the more professional experience and exposure a student can have, the more clear they can be when they actually make a choice about law school. So one of the things we've encouraged students to do is often to get a year or two of professional experience ahead of going into law school. Now, there are students who say, nope, I'm in the groove of school and I'm going straight through. And of course, we support them in that particular endeavor as well. But a little bit of professional experience can really clarify either the kind of law they're interested in or whether it was law school to begin.
Yep. The other thing that I thought about is sometimes you could delay going, but if you take the LSAT while you're in college, you're in the test taking mindset. So that's something is a nice thing to get out of the way. And that, well, the other thing is that if you go out and maybe you work as a paralegal, you can understand more about law and maybe the direction you want to specialize in before you even go. So I do think that the other thing we talk about a lot is this idea of networking and connecting with, adults who can be mentors to you or just connectors for you. That's really just a helpful thing to learn. And usually getting out of school and meeting people so you can do that is going to be more beneficial to you than sometimes going straight into law school where you don't do any networking. And so that whole idea of networking is something that you don't really get the benefit of getting a chance to do.
And I would just add to that sometimes students are not actually clear what a career in law will be like. And so absolutely networking, but and I would add shadowing, and you mentioned being a paralegal, all of those things really help give a sense of whether or not that's a fit.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to thank you for answering all those questions. I'm going to pass the mic to you and Maya, and you guys can have a 5 to 7 minute conversation, and then we'll come back and answer some final questions.
Thank you, Andy. And Maya, so delighted that you are with us. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here.
I would love to have you introduce yourself with your major, your hometown, and then we'll hop into some questions.
All right. My name is Maya Gerster. I am a senior from Greenwich, Connecticut, and I am an economics major with an entrepreneurship and psych double minor.
So Maya, tell me, when you entered Wake Forest, tell me a little bit about what you were thinking in terms of career and how that's evolved. And then I would love to talk about your job search.
Yes. So I came into Wake Forest like many freshmen, pre-med, and I was bound and determined to be pre-med, and didn't really think I needed to go to the OPCD. I didn't think I was going to medical school. I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't need to go and work on my resume and things like that. But my parents were very adamant that I meet a lovely professor named Patty Robinson. And I ended up in your office, and somehow over the course of the next year, by the time I was a sophomore, I decided to pivot and switch from an intended bio major to a econ major because that was something that I really liked and enjoyed in high school. And now I've ended up there, and I haven't looked back. And I've kind of interned in a variety of different industries over the years.
You have. And I love that as an econ major, you've stayed in the college, kept that entrepreneurship minor. And then your job search, I'd love to hear about what your job search looked like, because it started fairly early. And I'll never forget you running in to say, I got it.
Yes. So freshman summer before sophomore year, I wanted to make sure I didn't want to do pre-med anymore. So I shadowed an orthopedic surgeon. The next summer, I interned in financial services. And then this past summer, I interned in consulting at Accenture. And so going back to junior fall, I threw my hat in the ring, as many rings as I possibly could. That was something that everyone in the OPCD emphasized, just applying places and not necessarily worrying about the brand name of a company. And I got the internship right away. I made sure that getting that return offer was my highest priority. And so I made sure I was networking throughout the internship with different people there, and ultimately it translated, and I will be going back there next summer, which is exciting.
So many of the things, and congratulations,
Thank
many
you.
of the things that you did in order to be here are the very things we want many of our seniors doing. So while you have landed early, so many seniors do not. And that is because so many of the interests are varied on our side of the house. So when you think about the things that are the success tools that seniors are doing and can be doing, what are the success strategies that you think about?
I definitely think using your network to your advantage. I think something I've also seen a lot more of since COVID has been a lot of peer-to-peer help. Just talking to different people who have interned at companies that you might be interested in. I know I've talked to a couple of my friends or friends of friends about Accenture, just because they've had some questions. So I think Wake is always a supportive community, but using your peers to your advantage and then using your parents' peers to your advantage and being able to talk to them. You kind of have like three circles. You have Wake alums, you have your peers here, and then you have your parents and like in their circle of people that they know. And I wouldn't be afraid to use that to your advantage at all, because if you're not doing it, someone else is.
Ooh, I love that. So if you are a parent and you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I haven't really haven't thought about helping my student tap into my network or into the alumni network or into their peer network, there's a little reluctance on the student side. What would it take to encourage a student to begin that networking process, either peer, alumni, or even within their family circles?
I think the way I got into I started feeling most comfortable with networking was when I had someone mutual to introduce to make that introductory connection. Because if you're sending an email to an alum that you know that you think I should connect with, which you've done many times, one, I have to follow up on that email, and two, it makes there's already something in common between everyone. So I think just making sure that you have people that can help you facilitate those connections, just because once you get the ball rolling with networking, it gets easier every time, and you'll be able to reach out and make those connections on your own.
Nice. So either having someone who's one of your adult fans like me
Yes.
connect you via email or LinkedIn or some of those things, or having a peer go ahead and do that for you. Again, there's some accountability within that, or whether it's a family connection too. So I like how you've described these three spheres. Would you tell us, just for parents who are listening, how are students feeling right now being back on campus, and how might that be impacting engagement in some of this process?
I think we are all, particularly seniors, really, really happy to be back on campus. I do think, however, we forgot a little bit what it's like to be a true full-time student and not just be able to like roll out of bed and log onto your laptop for an hour of class and then go back to doing whatever you were doing before. So I think we're all readjusting to life as it was, which is a great thing, but it also is a little bit stressful. And I coming from someone who got an internship pretty late in the process, last year, at least for consulting, I know how stressful it is, and it feels like everyone around you has an offer or a job and an internship. So I definitely understand that a lot of my peers are feeling this way, and that I'm very fortunate to be in a position where I'm not, but I totally understand because I was in that position with my internship last year. So I think just being conscious of the fact that going back into the real world is an adjustment, and we all feel the pressure of wanting to have a job after graduation. I think if anything, just support is all we need.
So supporting students, and even if that engagement comes a little bit more slowly,
Mhm.
being thoughtful and encouraging, right? That things will
Yes.
work out, and that to understand that those students are feeling that pressure, and that there's an office that wants to take that pressure off.
Definitely.
Any other advice that you would give, Maya, for parents who are listening if their students are in the hunt or have not yet started the hunt?
Let me think. I mean, I would just say the OPCD has drop-in hours. I can't remember what days they are, but I know you have drop-in hours
Yes.
and you have office hours. And I
do.
think one of the ways that's so easy to get started is to just grab a friend and go. And then you're not showing up alone. Even if you did, it was fine. But those drop-in office hours, before I even was in any of the college to career courses or before I had any of my internships, I started by going to those drop-in hours, and I think it's a great place to start. So I would go there.
I love it. As I recall, that was the first place that we updated your resume.
Yes, it was.
Yes, and indeed, I think those drop-in hours, they're casual. Students can come on in and we can get a lot of different things done and get some of that networking started. And I love the way you have characterized that. Maya, thank you so much for being with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, thanks for taking the time to be with us. You gave us great experience that you've had, but also great advice for parents to be thinking about as they talk to their own kids. So thanks for doing it.
Yeah, not a problem.
All right, great. Well, I'm going to bring Heidi, Mike, and Stuart back for just a really quick round of fast questions. So try to make your answers short and brief, but I'll just ask you each individually. So Mike, there's a parent who said their son is an international student and they're trying to figure out like, is it, how much more difficult is it to get a job, and is it possible? Are there any particular things that student should be doing to try to get employment in the US?
So great question. Frankly, I don't think it's any different than it's been in years past. We were working very closely with the employer relations team for companies that will sponsor students. If they're a STEM major, be very aware of the impact that has on the visa process with the 12 months plus 24. But stay in touch with us and engage. Going Global is a wonderful resource they should be taking advantage of and using, plus the network. The network of international students that have landed is huge. And we have access and can provide resources to help those students gain it. And we're partners with our International Student Services Group. So we work very closely with them as well.
Great. Heidi, if I have a senior who's graduating early in December 21, so just in a couple of months, any particular advice you would give to that student to help them in their process?
Absolutely. They should be excited that there are, first, congratulations to that student. And second, there are so many opportunities out there right now. I want to be sure that all of those different personal branding items and those skills are in place, but I want them applying, and then coming in here to practice their interviewing skills with us. Mostly, I would want them to be thinking to not panic, but to remember that you just chip away at this a few applications at a time. So when we're saying 35 to 50 applications, that doesn't mean all at once. It means that we want to do 5 to 7, 5 to 7, 5 to 7, and then networking within those different organizations where they have their highest, the opportunity that has the highest value to them.
That's great. And also, if they graduate early, that we're still around after they graduate, so they can always call us and we can work with them, especially on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever else. So they definitely have access to use our services, as do when they graduate in May. We have a whole alumni and personal and career development center that we put a link into the chat so people could have that in the Q&A. So that's also just to know we're still here for them even after they've graduated. Stuart, so someone had an interest of trying to help our students work in smaller companies, maybe startups, and maybe in not necessarily the big cities. Like, what's some advice you would give to a student who's interested in things like that?
Well, I think that's kind of the beauty of some of our vendors and resources we have available. And I know my colleagues are tired of me saying create a search agent, but if you know exactly what you're looking for, specifically by an area or field or so forth, you can go on a handshake, put in search criteria, save it, and it sends you emails weekly or daily. There's another source called Career Shift that a lot of people use to can go in and do the exact same thing. It's a different resource, but it can narrow it down by size of company and specific areas, and it can give you contact information. A lot of times we have those smaller companies are the ones that have a lot of opportunities that typically don't get as many applications because people are drawn to the limelight of a brand. So it's a great opportunity. And then, like, another common theme today is once you identify that, just start networking, contacting, reaching out, putting yourself out there.
Great. Thanks, Stuart. Heidi, one last question. For seniors who are applying to grad school, what kind of support does our office give to them?
I see I was muted. What I was saying was, I love that question. We have, depending on which kind of medical or professional school those students are applying to, prior to graduation, we have all sorts of not only services, but strategies. So Brian Mendenhall sees all of our students who are going into anything that in the healthcare, pre-health kind of a field. And then we have another coach, Shan Woolard, and she loves a personal statement like no one I've ever seen before. So we want to see those personal statements, help students with them. Additionally, we want to help them think through the process of getting their letters of recommendation from their professors and what those could look like.
Great. And then obviously we have relationships with faculty members who we can refer them to for more specialized help in their area too, right?
Correct.
Great. Okay. Well, Mike, Heidi, Stuart, thank you so much. And Maya, thank you most of all for taking the time to be with us. And I think we're about to wrap up, and we just want to say thank you for joining us. We're hoping that the information we gave you some sense of the fact that there are a lot of resources available for your student. We would love to see them and help them, whether you have to sort of urge them really strongly, or you have to incentivize them in some way, that you have enough to talk about with them, whether it be between now and the holidays or at Thanksgiving, just to be able to get them to move our way, or bring a few friends. I mean, if they feel like they're afraid to come, like come to a group session, or make an appointment with a couple of friends, like we'd be happy to see them. So we are very optimistic that this is going to be a really strong year from a job market standpoint, and Wake Forest students always do great. So it's just a matter of taking those steps, as Heidi said, a few steps at a time, and before you know it, it gets easier and easier. It's always hard in the beginning, but once you get going, you really start to learn how to do it and realize you have a lot of resources and a lot of people with you to try to help you make it work. So we're really glad we could be with you. I'll pass it back to Brad.
Andy and everyone, I want to thank you very much for your time. Maya, thank you so much from a student perspective. A couple very quick things. One, encourage your students, support them, encourage them to go into the office to be able to take advantage of what's there. That consistency of being able to stay on top of this is critical. But I want to mention to everyone, the session tonight was recorded, and we'll have it up on the OPCD website probably in about a week's time, and we'll send out a notice to everybody to alert you to where that can be found. So thank you so much for your time this evening. I think this just gives you a little bit of a sense for just what this office does on a 24-hour basis to help students. We are very lucky to have everybody at Wake, and it's just another example of kind of, I think, a personal connection that we want to provide to our students. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll be in touch sometime soon. Bye now.